My name is Taylor Mitchell, and I'm 27 years old. What happened when I stood up to give a toast at my brother Ryan's engagement party last Saturday night is something that will forever change how my family views success, failure, and which child they should have been supporting all along. Won't picture this: my parents finishing their glowing speech about Ryan's achievements, while subtly highlighting my ongoing struggles to find direction. Their confident smiles radiating as 150 guests absorbed their assessment of their two children. But when I rose from my seat, champagne glass in hand, and began speaking about family loyalty and unconditional support, those smiles vanished completely as everyone realized the failure they'd just publicly dismissed was about to redefine the entire evening. You see, that toast wasn't just congratulations for my brother's engagement. It was a carefully prepared revelation about family priorities, hidden success, and the consequences of publicly humiliating someone whose true achievements you've never bothered to understand. The same parents who had just used Ryan's engagement announcement as another opportunity to showcase the differences between their successful son and their struggling daughter were about to discover that their assumptions about both children were catastrophically wrong. Before we dive into this incredible story of family dynamics exploding in real time, I need to know, where in the world are you watching this unfold? Drop your country and what time it is there in the comments. Are you starting your day with some family drama justice, or winding down your evening with a story about public humiliation backfiring spectacularly? And if you've ever been the family member whose achievements were overshadowed while someone else got all the praise, give this video a thumbs up right now. You're about to see what happens when quiet success meets public vindication. Quick question while we're getting started: have you ever been in a family situation where your accomplishments were minimized while the siblings were celebrated, even though your achievements might have been more significant? Because this story is going to explore how family favoritism can blind parents to the reality of what their children are actually building. Let me take you back to the moment this family dynamic reached its breaking point, which happened during the formal toast portion of Ryan's engagement celebration. The party was being held at the Grandview Country Club, an elegant venue that my parents had chosen to properly honor what they considered the most important milestone in their family's recent history. Ryan had just gotten engaged to his college girlfriend Sarah, and my parents had been planning this celebration for months as a way to announce the engagement to our extended family and their social circle. The evening was designed to showcase Ryan's success, his recent promotion to senior marketing manager, his beautiful fiancée from a well-connected family, and his upcoming marriage that represented everything my parents valued about building a stable, respectable adult life. The guest list included relatives, family friends, Ryan's colleagues, and various people whose opinions mattered to my parents' social standing. It was the kind of formal celebration where speeches were expected, and family dynamics would be on full display for everyone who knew us. When Dad stood up to give the traditional toast to the happy couple, I knew from his expression that this wouldn't just be congratulations for Ryan and Sarah, it would be a comprehensive presentation of my parents' pride in their son's life choices, with implicit comparisons to family members who hadn't achieved the same level of conventional success. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate Ryan and Sarah's engagement, Dad began, his voice carrying the confidence of someone about to share genuinely good news. As you all know, we couldn't be more proud of the young man Ryan has become, and the beautiful future he's building with Sarah. The speech continued with detailed praise for Ryan's professional achievements, his personal character, and his wise choice in selecting a life partner who shared his values and ambitions. Mom joined in, describing Ryan's journey from college to career success, his responsibility and maturity, and how proud they were to see him reaching such important milestones. Ryan represents everything we hope to see in our children, Mom said, her voice warm with genuine pride. He's built a successful career, found love with a wonderful woman, and is creating the kind of stable, fulfilling life that makes parents grateful for the job they've done raising their children. So far, the toast was everything you'd expect at an engagement celebration: loving pair. NTS celebrating their son's happiness and success. But then came the part that revealed the family dynamics I'd been dealing with for years. Of course, we know that not everyone finds their path as clearly or as quickly as Ryan has, Dad continued, his tone shifting slightly as he prepared to address what he considered the family's more challenging circumstances. Some family members are still figuring out their direction in life, and that's okay too. We love all our children, even when they're Journeys take longer or require more patience and understanding. Every person in that room knew he was talking about me. The indirect reference was Dad's diplomatic way of acknowledging my presence while highlighting that I remained a family member who hadn't achieved the kind of success worth celebrating at formal gatherings. Taylor is still working on finding her place in the world, Mom added with the sympathetic tone parents use when discussing children who haven't lived up to expectations. She's always been more of a free spirit, more interested in creative pursuits than traditional career building. We're hopeful that she'll eventually find something that provides the stability and purpose that Ryan has achieved through his more focused approach to life. Now, more interested in creative pursuits than traditional career building. Still working on finding her place in the world. The characterizations were delivered with loving concern, but they painted a clear picture for the assembled guests. Ryan was the success story, while Taylor remained a work in progress who required patience and hope rather than celebration. And pride. But tonight is about celebrating Ryan and Sarah, Dad concluded, raising his glass. About acknowledging what success and good decision-making look like, and about looking forward to the beautiful future they're building together. The applause was warm and genuine, as guests celebrated the happy couple, while also absorbing my parents' assessment of their family dynamics. I sat there listening to 150 people congratulating Ryan while simultaneously being educated about my ongoing struggle to achieve the kind of life worth public recognition. What the room didn't know, what my parents had never bothered to discover despite 3 years of opportunities, was that their assessment of both children was not just wrong, but spectacularly backwards, in ways that would become apparent. I stood up to offer my own toast. Time to pause here because what I'm about to reveal about my creative pursuits and my actual financial situation compared to Ryan's is going to completely flip this family narrative on its head. If you're enjoying this story about family assumptions meeting reality in the most public way possible, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We post content like this every week about family dynamics and the moment when people who've been underestimated prove everyone wrong. Real quick, what country are you watching from, and have you ever been publicly mischaracterized by family members who didn't actually know what you'd accomplished? Drop it in the comments because the psychology behind families who assume instead of asking is absolutely fascinating. After my parents finished their toast and returned to their seats, there was that expectant pause that occurs at formal celebrations when additional family members are invited to share their thoughts about the happy couple. The room looked toward me with polite attention, expecting the kind of brief, gracious remarks that unsuccessful family members typically offer at successful sibling celebrations. I stood slowly, champagne glass in hand, taking a moment to look around the room at faces that included not just family and friends, but several of my parents' business associates and social acquaintances whose opinions influenced their standing in the community. Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate Ryan and Sarah, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the country club's elegant dining room. Family celebrations like this are wonderful opportunities to share important news and recognize achievements that might not always get the attention they deserve. I paused, making eye contact with my parents, who were smiling expectantly, assuming I was about to offer conventional congratulations that would complement their presentation of family dynamics. Before I talk about Ryan and Sarah, I want to address something my parents mentioned about family members taking different paths and requiring patience while they find their place in the world. The room's attention sharpened slightly. This wasn't following the typical script for engagement party toasts, and people were curious about where I was heading. 3 years ago, I made a decision that my parents interpreted as choosing creative pursuits over traditional career building. What they didn't know, what they never asked about, was that my creative work was actually a business strategy that has been more successful than anyone in this room probably imagined. I could see confusion beginning to cross my parents' faces as they tried to understand what I was revealing and why I was doing it during Ryan's celebration. You see, while my parents were worrying about my unconventional path, I was building a digital marketing agency that specializes in creative content for technology companies. What started as freelance graphic design work has grown into a company with 12 employees, offices in 3 cities, an annual revenue of $2.80 million. The silence that followed was unlike any quiet I'd ever experienced at a family gathering. 150 people processing that the family failure they'd just heard described was actually running a multi-million-dollar business. But that's not the most relevant part of tonight's celebration, I continued, my voice steady despite the magnitude of what I was revealing. The most relevant part is how this success has allowed me to support the people I love, including contributing to milestones that matter to our family. I turned to face Ryan and Sarah directly. Ryan, Sarah, I'm incredibly happy for both of you, and I wanted to share in making tonight's celebration as special as possible. The venue we're in tonight, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, and the live music, I arranged and paid for all of it as my engagement gift to you. The silence deepened as people realized that the struggling family member had just revealed herself as the benefactor who had funded the entire elegant celebration they were enjoying. The cost was $47,000, which represents about 6 days of revenue for my company, I said, looking directly at my parents whose faces had gone completely white. I wanted Ryan and Sarah to have a beautiful celebration, and I wanted our family and friends to share in that joy without worrying about expenses. Ryan's mouth was hanging open. Sarah looked stunned. My parents appeared to be in shock. But I also wanted everyone here to understand something about assumptions, family support, and the difference between struggling to find your path and choosing a path that others don't immediately understand or recognize. The room was calm, completely silent now, with guests trying to process this complete reversal of the family narrative they'd just been presented. For 3 years, my parents have described my career as creative pursuits that lack the stability and purpose of traditional employment. Tonight, those creative pursuits funded this entire celebration, while Ryan's traditional career success generated enough income to afford the engagement ring and his share of their future wedding planning. I could see several guests looking at Ryan with new understanding. His marketing manager's salary, while respectable, was nowhere near the level required to host the kind of celebration they were enjoying. This isn't about comparing achievements or diminishing anyone's success, I continued, my voice carrying a calm authority that commanded attention. Ryan has built a career he's proud of, and found love with an amazing woman. Those are genuine accomplishments worth celebrating. I raised my glass higher, but this is about family dynamics and the importance of asking questions instead of making assumptions about each other's lives and capabilities. I looked directly at my parents. Mom, Dad, when you introduced me tonight as someone who's still finding her place in the world, you were describing a daughter who has built a more successful business than most people in this room will ever achieve. When you expressed hope that I'll eventually find something that provides stability and purpose, you were talking about someone whose company generates more monthly revenue than Ryan makes annually. The confrontation was public and undeniable. Lied. Every person in the room now understood that the family dynamics they'd just heard described were not just wrong, but embarrassingly backwards. But more importantly, I said, my voice softening slightly, this is about unconditional family support and celebration. I didn't fund tonight's party to prove a point about my financial success. I did it because I love Ryan and Sarah, and I wanted their engagement celebration to be beautiful and memorable. I turned back to the happy couple. Ryan, you've found happiness with an incredible woman, and that's the most important success anyone can achieve. Sarah, you're joining a family that loves deeply, even when we don't always communicate that love in the healthiest ways. I raised my glass for the final time. To Ryan and Sarah, may your marriage be built on the kind of understanding, support, and genuine knowledge of each other that creates lasting happiness. And may all of us learn to celebrate each other's actual achievements, instead of making assumptions about what success looks like. The applause that followed was unlike any response I'd ever received from my extended family. People were standing, clapping not just for Ryan and Sarah, but for a revelation that had completely recontextualized their understanding of our family dynamics. But the most important reactions came from the people who mattered most. Ryan stood up and walked over to me, his eyes filled with what looked like admiration mixed with embarrassment. Taylor, I had no idea about your company, about you paying for tonight. I'm sorry for never asking about what you were actually building. You don't need to apologize, Ryan. You've been focused on building your own life, which is exactly what you should have been doing. Sarah joined us, tears in her eyes. Taylor, this celebration is absolutely beautiful, and the fact that you created all of this for us, I'm overwhelmed by your generosity. Your family now, Sarah. Your family takes care of each other. But the conversation I'd been anticipating came when my parents approached after most guests had moved on to other conversations. Taylor, Mom said, her voice shaky, we owe you an enormous apology. For which part? For everything. For not knowing about your success, for not asking about your work, for describing you as struggling when you were actually thriving, and for doing all of that publicly at your brother's celebration. Mom, you described what you saw based on the information you had. The problem wasn't your observations, it was your lack of curiosity about getting more complete information. Dad was holding the evening's program, which listed me as the celebration sponsor in small print at the bottom, information he'd never noticed despite being the host. Taylor, your mother is right. We failed as parents by not understanding what you'd accomplished, and by making assumptions instead of asking questions. What bothers me most isn't that you didn't know about my financial success, I said. It's that you were comfortable publicly describing me as a failure without ever being curious enough to learn what I was actually doing with my life. We never thought of you as a failure. Dad, you literally introduced me tonight as someone who's still working on finding her place in the world, in front of 150 people, while I was sitting at a table in a celebration I had funded. If that's not treating someone like a failure, what would be? The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, with my parents apologizing and asking questions they should have asked years earlier about my work, my company, and my decision to keep my success private, rather than sharing it with family members who had shown no interest in understanding my choices. But the most meaningful change wasn't their apologies. It was the shift in how they began talking about both their children at subsequent family gatherings. 3 months later, when my company was featured in Entrepreneur magazine as one of the most innovative digital marketing agencies, my parents shared the article with everyone they knew and introduced me at social events as their daughter, the successful entrepreneur. Ryan's reaction to the evening was more complex but ultimately healthier for our relationship. Taylor, can I ask you something? He said when he called me a week after the engagement party. Of course. Were you angry at me for getting all the family attention and praise while your achievements were being ignored? I wasn't angry at you, Ryan. You didn't control how Mom and Dad chose to present us or what they decided to celebrate. That was their choice, not yours. But it must have been frustrating to listen to them describe you as struggling, when you were actually more successful than I am. It was frustrating, but not because I needed their recognition to validate my success. It was frustrating because it showed how little interest they had in actually understanding what I was building. Why didn't you tell them about your company's success? Because every time I tried to share positive news about my work over the years, it was minimized or dismissed as luck rather than accomplishment. Eventually, I stopped trying to educate people who weren't interested in learning. Taylor, I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've built, and I'm grateful for everything you did to make our engagement celebration so special. Thank you, Raya. And that means a lot. 6 months later, our family dynamic had transformed in ways that recognized both children's actual achievements, rather than assumptions about who deserved celebration. My parents learned to ask questions before making pronouncements about their children's lives, and family gatherings became more honest about everyone's real circumstances, rather than performances based on incomplete information. The toast that made their smiles vanish wasn't just a revelation about hidden success. It was a lesson about the importance of knowing your family members well enough to celebrate their actual achievements instead of making assumptions about their limitations. Sometimes the most powerful response to being publicly diminished isn't defending yourself or arguing about unfair treatment. It's simply revealing information that forces everyone to confront how wrong their assumptions have been. And sometimes the sweetest vindication comes not from proving people wrong, but from using your success to create beautiful experiences for the people you love, even when those people haven't been supporting you in return. Before we wrap up this incredible story of family assumptions exploding in real time, I'm genuinely curious. What time zone are you in right now? And have you ever been in a situation where family members made public statements about your life without actually knowing what you'd accomplished? The psychology behind families who assume rather than investigate is absolutely fascinating. And if this story reminded you that success often happens quietly while people are busy making assumptions about your limitations, please share it with someone who might need that encouragement. You never know who's currently being underestimated by family members, and could use some hope that their real achievements will eventually speak louder than other people's misconceptions. What public mischaracterizations have you experienced from family members who didn't know the full story of your success? What achievements have you built while people assumed you were struggling? Thank you for experiencing this family celebration revelation with me, whether you're starting Your morning in Toronto thinking about family dynamics, or ending your evening in Melbourne reflecting on the power of quiet success. I'm grateful you witnessed this moment of assumptions meeting reality. If you've ever been the family member whose accomplishments were overlooked while someone else got celebrated, you're definitely not alone. Sometimes the most satisfying response to being underestimated is simply being successful enough to fund the celebrations where people discover they were completely wrong about your capabilities. Make sure to drop quiet success in the comments if you believe that building achievements without requiring constant recognition often leads to the most powerful revelations. And while you're commenting, tell me what country you're watching from. I love seeing our global community and how universal these family favoritism patterns unfortunately are. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell because we share stories like this every week about family dynamics, hidden success, and those incredible moments when people who thought they had you figured out realized they didn't know you at all. Final question. Do you think I should have revealed my success earlier to prevent years of being mischaracterized? Or was it more powerful to let the revelation happen at the moment when the contrast was most obvious? I'm genuinely interested in your thoughts about when to share achievements and when to let assumptions continue until they become publicly embarrassing for the people making them. Remember, your success doesn't require other people's recognition to be real, but when that recognition finally comes through undeniable evidence, it can transform relationships in ways that benefit everyone who's been operating on incomplete information about your actual capabilities and contributions.